the slides all in a sequence so we don't jump back and forth. That takes a little more time. So thank you for that. If you could provide them the evening before, that would be great. The other announcement is there is an NGO reception being held tonight. It's not part of IWC, but we've been asked to make sure you all are aware of it. That's at 6 p.m. on the main lobby floor bar of the hotel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Regarding the presentation that refers especially to those who will present different reports tomorrow, and if there are any agenda items still for Thursday to be presented. Now let us start with today's agenda. Welcome at the second day. I hope you enjoyed last evening's reception, and I hope you got some more energy and motivation for our work that is in front of us today. We will start with the agenda item 6, which is finance and administration. And we will start first with the agenda item 6.1, which is report of the Finance and Administration Committee. You probably know that the Finance and Administration Committee has met on Sunday, 16th of October. The draft report was made available yesterday evening, and the final version should be out this morning, which gives you a little time to digest this report. And therefore, the chair of the FNA committee will briefly go through all the report and present the main points so that you will also have an oral presentation now of the report and of the recommendations of the FNA to the Commission. With this, I pass the floor to the chair of the FNA Commission, Ryan Wolf, USA. Ryan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin my report, as this is the first time I'm taking the floor in an official capacity, the United States would like to thank the government of Slovenia for hosting this meeting again in beautiful Portorož, as well as for the wonderful reception last night. Thank you very much. Now, putting on my hat as FNA chair, I will begin my report. I do plan to go over this report in a little more detail. As delegates, I know, received the draft in their inbox during the reception last night. They may not have had full time to read it yet this morning. So what I plan to do is to begin with the topics that the committee either had consensus on or merely noted and endorsed the reports that were given. And then I will move to those items that there was either no consensus or there was additional work or further discussions needed between the committee in plenary or in plenary itself. So for those former items, as you can see on the screen here, I will begin with administrative matters. We had reports from the Voluntary Fund for Governments with Limited Means, the Voluntary Conservation Fund Steering Group, on the Voluntary Welfare Fund. For the Limited Means Group and Fund, excuse me. The report outlined contributions that have been received over the past intersessional period. Those contributions were noted And the committee thanks those that contributed and welcomed any future contributions. For the VCF steering group, as well as actually the welfare fund, both reports outlined eligibility and allocation or evaluation criteria for the use of the funds for allocation in an intersessional period to be consistent with those other voluntary funds. And for all of those reports, the committee endorsed and recommends to the commission endorsement of all the recommendations within. For the IWC headquarters for the Red House, the Secretariat noted, due to current market conditions, it would appreciate some more flexibility, as no offer had been received at £1.5 million, which is what the commission had previously asked the Secretariat to seek a sale at. So the Finance and Administration Committee approved proceeding with the sale at £1.35 million, granting some additional flexibility if needed to the Secretariat over the next biennium. Now turning to financial matters. The committee received annual or biennial background information on the contributions formula and reviewed the outturn positions for 2018 to 2021, as well as the forecast outturn for 2022. The committee noted these reports and agreed with the budgetary subcommittee's recommendations to adopt the audited accounts, noting the achievement of 4 consecutive clean audit opinions. And we also agreed to the proposed observer, non-governmental organization, and media fees for the next biennium. We then received a detailed presentation from the scientific committee. We received a report on its prior year spending, its 2022 spending to date, the scientific committee's proposed 2023 work plan, and it was noted that within all of that report, many of the projects over the past intersessional period, of course, had to be postponed due to the pandemic. There was strong support in the Finance Administration Committee for the Scientific Committee's work, for the proposed budget and work plan, and some countries in particular highlighted the importance of Scientific Committee's support for Aboriginal subsistence whaling as a priority for the next biennium. We also received a presentation from the Scientific Committee on a communications initiative. This is a new initiative they are working on to communicate work at the committee by developing new communication tools and material tailored to the commission. Again, this was an update. The presentation was to make the committee aware that this would be worked on over the next biennium, and a presentation on this initiative would not come to the commission until IWC69. So the committee welcomed the work and look forward to the presentation in 2024. Regarding budgetary subcommittee operations, the committee reviewed the report that outlines the rotation of contracting governments in the budgetary subcommittee membership. We supported Australia remaining as chair of the budgetary subcommittee, thanked Martin Krebs for 4 years of service as vice chair, and noted to the commission that a vacancy remains for the vice chair for the coming biennium. Now turning back to administrative matters and financial matters, where there's additional commission discussion, decisions, or other conversations that needed to happen, or no consensus in the committee. There was 5 proposed agreements with other organizations that were presented by the Secretariat. The first 2 were memorandums of understanding with ATLAFCO and the Center for Coastal Studies. There was broad support for the committee in endorsing these MOUs. However, some delegations wish to see the text translated before a final decision of the commission this week. The last three MOUs that are on the screen with UNEP SPA, the letter of intent with FAO and the IOTC, and the contract with FAO on ABNJ. There was support for the work in the committee, but concerns were raised regarding the language in those documents, in particular regarding the dispute settlement mechanism and other texts that may put the IWC at risk through such binding language. So the Secretariat was asked to correspond with FAO. There were some examples given of other types of MOUs that did not have that language. The Secretariat noted they would do so after the committee concluded and report back to plenary this week. And again, I would note also for these three, the same delegations wish to see translated text. Maybe before I move on to the next one, I do think there is an update from the Executive Secretary on this based on those conversations. So I'll pause here.
Thank you, FNA Chair. And I will now provide some updates on these proposed agreements with other organizations. Most of these have now been translated and posted. There's just a couple of them left to go. We'll have them up by lunchtime. The Secretariat decided to withdraw the MOU with SPA UNEP. We will continue to work under a work plan more informally. We have heard, as the FNA Chair said, from several delegations that the MOUs with COMAFAT and the Center for Coastal Studies, which are non-UN agencies, are acceptable. The proposed cooperation agreement between IWC and the UN Food and Agriculture Organization's Indian Ocean Tuna Commission is online in FNA under 3.43, now available or in English and Spanish. The French has just come in the pipeline. So, sorry, no, the CA is available in all three languages. I want to highlight again that this cooperation agreement has been approved by the members of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, 22 of which are IWC members. The LOA for the Common Oceans Project, which is a little longer, we have received the Spanish and French versions. We're in the process of getting those ready to load on the website. The FAO did look at the information that the Commission raised in discussing these agreements. And they noted that in an MOU, there's no transfer of funds. It's a framework for cooperation. And an MOU contains a work plan that describes specific activities to develop. And joint collaboration, they're based on in-kind contributions. The letter of agreement, which is the contract, has standard clause on conflict resolution specifically is one of those legal clauses that cannot be modified. And we were reminded that the clause specifies that the arbitral tribunal would not have any authority to award punitive damages. And the FAO also mentioned that any country that is a member of the FAO has already agreed in some respect to the fact that the FAO uses these LOAs and cooperation agreements that have this dispute resolution. So I hope that these updates are informative for interested delegations. When you've had a chance to read them, please don't hesitate to come see me and we can discuss whatever concerns remain. Thank you, FNA Chair.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate the update there. So now I will continue with my report and other administrative matters. Oh. My ticker is not working anymore. So I need the next slide. There we go. Thank you. I would like to note here that, of course, the Commission is aware that the working group on operational effectiveness is a working group of FNA. So of course, we had a presentation and an in-depth discussion on all of the work that had been done intersessionally, just like you received here at the commission yesterday. We did take it in kind of in the order that you see on the screen in our discussion in committee. There was broad support for bringing the budget reform strategy to the commission. With the IWC strategic principles, there was not a lengthy discussion in the committee on this, but it was noted that it could be brought to the commission. However, highlighting that there was still some components within that that did not, some options that still needed to be chosen if that was to be adopted and move forward. And then we had a much longer discussion when it came to the governance reform proposals. And as a reminder from yesterday, there's kind of 3 sections to those proposals. The commission structure, the proposed modifications to the Bureau, as well as the commission meeting operations. There was some delegations that thought very specific aspects of the documents could be tasked to the OEWG for some future intersessional work. There were others that felt all of the recommendations needed to be looked at as a whole. There was not consensus and work should continue into the intersessional period. There was furthermore a number of delegations that really appreciated the work that had been done. It was uncertain that what further intersessional work would achieve, and therefore hope that progress could be made at the current meeting, if not on all of the elements put forward, at least certain elements where there seemed to be broad agreement and those decisions could be taken on at least some of the recommendations in the meeting, given their importance. So given the different views that were expressed, the FNA agreed that further discussions on this item should continue and come forward to the plenary this week for discussion and debate. We did also touch on the voting rights paper. This was a slide you saw yesterday, and I just want to bring it back here. Obviously, there was broad support for option 1, which the commission has already taken action on. But I would note that while that was action that was taken for this meeting, as you can see in the first bullet, part of the new rules of procedure change that we just made included the phrase exceptional circumstances. And as part of agreeing to support for option 1, there were a number of delegations and broad support that this should be tasked potentially to the OEWG for work in the upcoming intersessional period to look at defining criteria for what might constitute exceptional circumstances in the future. In addition, in the second 2 bullets there, those are option 2 and option 3 of that voting rights paper. As you heard yesterday, there was no consensus to adopt that at this meeting, but it was there was broad support to continue exploring this over the next intersessional period. And finally, as you heard yesterday, there was some delegations that raised issues related to visas and wanted the relevant intersessional work to be done on that as well. So that all came up under this agenda item in FNA. And then turning to financial matters for additional discussion here at the commission, or that there was no consensus in FNA, we had a report from the Intersessional Correspondence Group on strengthening finance. The chair introduced that, noted the original mandate of the ICGA-SF was complete, and therefore, if the group was to continue, it would have to be given a new mandate. And if that was the wish of the committee and the commission, they could potentially develop some new terms of reference in order to support a new mandate. Otherwise, the group would have reached the end of its mandate. So there was delegations that welcomed the ICG's work over the past years on raising funds, but concerns were raised that the voluntary contributions were heavily focused on certain aspects of the commission's work, felt that other aspects were lacking funding, which in turn influenced the direction of the commission's work program. The executive secretary and the chair confirmed all fundraising activity was to support work that had been endorsed by the commission. And so the committee welcomed those with concerns to work with the chair on drafting new terms of reference to see if those concerns could be reflected in the mandate potentially of the new group if it were to move forward. And maybe before I go on, it was those conversations were expected to continue between committee and the time this came up in commission. I believe they have. So I would turn to the chair of ICG, the Intersessional Correspondence Group on Strengthening Financing, for an update on those discussions and the potential new terms of reference.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, indeed, we have had some conversations in the margin. I have drafted some terms of reference, which in my opinion enter into the idea of the mandate that would be given to the group. However, we have not been able to find consensus on or agreement on these terms of reference, as in the discussion it was clear that the needs that have been voiced by some contracting governments go beyond the mandate of the potential group and would need a further discussion of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so now, with your indulgence, Chair, I think the last part of my presentation is actually under 6.2, the biennial budget, but if you're okay, I'll complete my report and then you can discuss all the matters as you see fit. Okay, so then the last item here, last but definitely not least, is the biennial budget of the commission. As everyone would hopefully be aware at this point, the commission is facing a significant financial challenge, which must be addressed here at IWC68. Under status quo budgeting, the commission's expenditure in 23 and 2024 financial years will exceed its income by around £622,000. Savings from delayed in-person meetings during the pandemic, around £258,000, are able to be used to address part of this difference, meaning the commission, however, would still be facing a total financial deficit of around £364,000 over the next 2 years. The commission is in this position due to a long history of adopting deficit budgets, member contributions not increasing for over a decade, and the commission's costs increasing every year due to inflation. The cash flow situation is now critical, and if not addressed here at IWC68, the commission would deplete its cash reserves before the end of 2025, but in reality could become insolvent before its next meeting in 2024 if cash flow does not improve. So the budgetary subcommittee presented this to the committee and 3 proposed options that they had worked on for how the commission could address the projected deficit. You see those on the screen here now. Option 1 proposes balancing the budget exclusively by reducing expenditure. To achieve this, significant cuts will need to be made to all budget categories, potentially including significant changes to the terms of secretariat staff contracts to lower compensation or making 2 to 3 staff members redundant. This would mean a reduction in level of support available to the commission. Moving to biennial scientific committee meetings, no intersessional scientific committee workshops except where needed to support the renewal of Aboriginal subsistence whaling quotas, no budget for invited participants in non-meeting years or a significant reduction in the research budget. Bureau meetings would move to virtual except when held during commission meetings. All pre-meetings ahead of the commission meetings would need to be virtual, and the commission itself would need to reduce its meeting in person by 1 day. Bad debt provision would need to be reduced, which would further increase the risk to commission if payment rates don't improve. So that all is option 1. Option 2 proposes balancing the budget through a mixture of increasing contributions and reducing expenditure. Under this option, expenditure would be reduced by 5% in 2023 and an additional 1% in 2024 for a total of £181,000 over the biennium. Plus, contributions would be increased by a similar percentage, as you see here, 4% in 2023 and a further 2% in 2024 for a total of £183,000 across the biennium. Under this option, savings would still need to be found from the same budget categories as under option 1, but the impact on the commission's business would be less severe. Savings could be found through moderate changes to the terms of secretariat staff contracts to lower compensation, moving to biennial scientific committee meetings with some in-person intersessional workshops in non-meeting years to progress priority agenda items, reduced invited participants budget in non-meeting years, but no other reductions to the research fund of the scientific committee itself. And of course, as with option 1, bureau meetings and pre-meetings would still have to be virtual, and the commission would need to reduce its in-person meeting by a day, along with the bad debt provision being reduced. So those are the cuts to expenditure that would still be needed under option 2. Finally, option 3 is much more straightforward. Expenditure would remain as it is at current levels, and financial contributions will cover the deficit by being raised 10% in 2023, plus an additional 2% in 2024. So, as noted in these documents, however, some additional adjustments, even under option 3, may be needed in 2025 or future years once the pandemic savings have been used up. So the last thing I'd like to note before turning it over to you, Chair, for discussion in conclusion, the Budgetary Subcommittee and the Finance and Administration Committee acknowledge that if the Commission were to adopt option 1 or 2 as proposed, the Commission will need to adjust its expectations of the Secretariat and the Scientific Committee going forward, as neither body would be able to provide the same level of support to the Commission that they currently do. So the committee, in its conclusion, summarized the range of views, or let me summarize for you the range of views that were expressed. There was some support for option 3, significant support for option 2, and a very small number that could only support at the time a modified version of, or a version of option 1. This was in contrast to the Budgetary Subcommittee's recommendation of option 2 itself. So the F&A Committee noted the report and the recommendations of the Budgetary Subcommittee, and as I just described, since consensus was not reached, the decision on the biennial budget was deferred here to the Commission. And I do want to take my final remark here, especially on this budgetary issue, to thank the Government of Australia and its leadership on the Budgetary Subcommittee for all the many discussions that have gone on over the intersessional period and the immense amount of work that has gone forward in presenting these 3 options that I have just outlined to the Commission. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Chair. What you see on the screen here are those items that I just walked through, and as it would be laid out here for potential Commission discussion and decisions. Number 1 under F&A report are all of those items in summary that I began my presentation with, where there was consensus or just endorsement of reports. And then the remaining 5 topics there, 2 through 6 on the screen, are those that I just walked through that will of course require more discussion and debate at the Commission, and should take into account the updates that were given by both the Executive Secretary and the Chair of the Intersessional Correspondence Group on Strengthening Financing. And with that, I am now done.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you and US for all the work done as chair of FNA committee. Thank you very much, Australia, in your capacity of the chair of the budget subcommittee for extensive work that you have done in preparation of this budget. Thank you, Secretariat, for all the support. And thank you, Stephanie, for your work as the chair of the intersessional group. And thank you, co-chairs of the working group on operational effectiveness, for all the contributions you've made to this. Now with this, I will open the floor for interventions for contracting governments. And my proposal would be that I open the floor for segments that you see presented on the screen. So if you're fine with this, I would first open the floor to contracting governments to the segment 1 here, which is FNA report, which means also discussion on those items that are mentioned. And then we will continue with the further interventions. So the floor is open. I see Norway as the first one on my list. So Norway, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to you all. And thank you to the Slovenian authorities for this lavish dinner you hosted us last evening. Norway recognizes the difficult financial situation for IWC, but does not agree that this situation should be solved by increasing member governments' financial contributions to the organization. The situation must be solved by cutting expenses. It is Norway's preference that the scientific committee is protected from severe budget cuts and that this committee can continue to meet annually. One way of saving money for the scientific committee is to have hybrid meetings, so the invited participants that are funded by IWC for specific items on the agenda can attend virtually. However, if the scientific committee has to change to biannual meetings, it is important that those subcommittees related to management can meet in person annually. That will be the groups dealing with stocks subject to aboriginal subsistence whaling and the implementation simulation trials. In these difficult economic times, it is important that the scientific committee and the secretariat can maintain their core duties. Of particular importance for Norway is the implementation reviews conducted by the scientific committee and the associated simulations trials made by the secretariat. It is therefore important that the secretariat maintains its capacity and competence to carry out such simulations. We will remind you that implementation reviews of the North Atlantic Common Minke Whale is the main argument for Norway's increased financial contribution to the IWC. In that regard, Mr. Chair, I will remind you that Norway is among those countries with the highest contributions to this organization. It might not necessarily continue like this in the future. If, for instance, if the scientific committee put less emphasis in carrying through implementation reviews. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I note your intervention. Your intervention falls more under, to my understanding, under considerations of the proposed budget. And I'm sure we heard it and will be recollected also when we come to the proposed budget. For the moment, I was inviting contracting governments to intervene on FNA report, the first part, so voluntary fund reports, Red House, outturn, financial reports, and scientific communications initiative. And as I don't see on this particular part, no other request for the floor from contracting governments, I'm asking if there is any request for the floor from observers. First, non-member governments. I see no request for the floor. Is there any request for the floor on this item from observers from IGOs? I also don't see any request for the floor. So is there any request for the floor on this item for observers, NGOs? I also don't see any request for the floor. So let us now move that with that, I conclude that there is a broad support in this room for the adoption of that part of the report. Actually, we don't have any objections. And once we come to the agenda item adoption of the report, which most probably won't be today, I will consider that this part can be adopted. Thank you. Now, I would open the discussion on the second part you see, which is proposed agreements with other organizations. We have heard that there were some concerns raised, but we also heard that the explanation from the Secretariat. With this, I open the floor for contracting governments. The floor is open. I see India requesting for the floor.
Yeah.
And I just remind you, we are talking about proposed agreements with other organizations. All the other agenda items will follow later. Will be open for discussion later. So India, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving us the floor. As India is already the part of the IOTC and is a member country of the IWC, we support the proposed cooperation agreement between the IWC and UNFO, Indian Ocean Tuna Commissions, as it stands currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India. That was a voice of support. I don't see any other request for the floor. So with this, I also conclude that there is a broad support in this room for the part of the FNA report that refers to agreements with other organizations, and that there is no objection. And I will also take it when we come to the adoption of this report as agreed. So let's now move on the third group of proposals, which are proposals coming from the working group on operational effectiveness. Now I open the floor for interventions for contracting governments regarding that block. Thank you. Please. Czech Republic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And since this is the first time Czech Republic is taking the floor and will be speaking on behalf of the EU member states party to the convention on this meeting. So let me firstly start with expressing our gratitude and many thanks to the Slovenian government for hosting this meeting in this beautiful venue for the third time. And it's our pleasure to be here. And
believe that this venue is already well recognized as the second home of the convention, so and commission indeed. So thank you very much, and thanks also for the lovely reception you host last evening. And if you allow me, Chair, I would like now to deliver a statement on the governance reform proposal from Working Group on Operational Effectiveness. The Czech Republic, speaking on behalf of the EU member states party to the ICRW, would like to thank the co-chairs, the colleagues of the drafting groups, and all members of the Working Group on Operational Effectiveness for their work on consolidating various contributions. We fully appreciate the extensive consultations that have led to these proposals, among others via open discussions in the working groups, through circulars, and through reach out, among others, to ATLEFCO. The EU and its member states support the proposed structure of 4 committees and the proposal for a management committee. We also support the other proposals for reformed and meeting procedures, namely recommended actions for the committee terms of reference, for the Bureau, and for the Commission meeting operations. And Mr. Chair, if you allow me, I would like to continue and address also the next important outcome from the working group on operation effectiveness regarding the IWC strategic principles and term of reference for working group on strategic plan, if you allow me. The Czech Republic, speaking on behalf of the EU member states party to the convention, would like to extend its thanks to the working group on operational effectiveness for drafting the proposals on the strategic principles. It is a good governance and proven best practices in different other international organizations to develop working plans and a strategic plan. Having clear working plans for all subsidiary bodies and the Commission itself would already be a major step forward and will help the Commission to prioritize its approved work. Therefore, the EU and its member states are open to both options recommended by the Working Group on Operational Effectiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Czech Republic. Currently, I don't see any other requests for the floor. USA, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I know you just heard from me for some time, but I'd like to put my hat back on as the United States here in response to your request to get feedback on the operational effectiveness working group proposals. I would also like to echo thanks to the 2 co-chairs of that working group and to the intensive amount of outreach and effort that they did over the last intersessional period to try and get as many views around the Commission through a challenging pandemic and other times to get these documents to where they are today and the proposals that are being put forward to the Commission. Walking through similar to what we just heard from the Czech Republic, walking through the 3 main components of those proposals, beginning with the budget reform strategy. The United States fully supports this document being endorsed for a lot of the reasons that I outlined in my F&A report. I think it is incredibly important for this Commission to have a strategy to address budget issues going forward in the future. And this document was shared extensively over the past intersessional period, and we fully support its endorsement. Regarding the strategic principles, if the Commission does decide to do this, we do just want to note that we believe a separate working group should be established if that's what they plan to do, as the discussion is outside the mandate, at least of the current terms of reference of the OEWG working group. So just wanted to be clear, if that is something the Commission endorses, the US believes that would have to be established as a new working group. Regarding the governance proposals itself, the US can support those that are outlined within, including the new committee structure that are being proposed. However, we would strongly prefer to not adopt the new proposed terms of reference for the management committee at this time. We would propose that the management committee simply be reflected after this meeting as a consolidation of the existing terms of reference for those committees that it would be subsuming, if you will. And then tasking all the new committees in the structure to work over the next biennium to develop new terms of reference to present to the commission at IWC 69. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, US, and thank you for your views. I don't see any further requests for the floor. However, I would remind the Commission that there were some items left open or not concluded by the FNA. So I'm in your hands regarding the drawing of conclusions. Okay, I see Republic of Palau. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're relatively new to these meetings. And so I'm not very sure if we adopt these reports, are we making decision that those recommendations would be approved? Could I get some clarification? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, by agreeing here to the proposals, I understand then that when we come to the agenda item adoption, which will be later on, we, with no objections here, will simply adopt the conclusions. If that clarifies your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That clarifies my query on the proposals for operational effectiveness. There's some issues relating to the budget reform, as well as the overall structure. There are structures for several committees, about 4 committees. We feel that 4 committees are too many committees. And since IWC is facing financial constraints, we were thinking perhaps we could combine 2 of the subcommittees, like the conservation committees and the management committee, to make it into 1. So there would be basically 3 committees at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Republic of Palau. I have Antigua and Barbuda. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to join with others to congratulate the co-chair of the Operational Effectiveness Committee for the work they have done. And just to emphasize, Mr. Chair, that they made real significant effort to bring members of the commission together for input into what I consider to be a very important document. However, Mr. Chair, I'm of the view that because it's such a fundamental part of our work, and of course it will change significantly the way in which this body functions, I still think that there is need for more participation of members to really contribute to the recommendations that are coming out of this committee. I would like to ask of the chair of the FNA whether or not, if we cherry pick some of these recommendations for immediate acceptance. How will that affect the other recommendations of which we're not too comfortable with? And that brings to mind exactly what the Republic of Palau has just introduced, the issue of the merger of some of these subcommittees, and also issues relating to voting rights and other areas that will affect our contributions to this organization. I was therefore wondering if we could delay a little bit on decisions that are gonna affect our financial commitment to the organization, and also issues that would affect or impact the effective implementation of the management commitments and management obligations that this organization, this commission have to its members. So I would like to hear from the FNA committee, what is his perspective with regards to our concerns in those areas?
Thank you very much, Antigua and Barbuda. USA, Ryan, can you please answer?
I think,
Reply.
if I can understand the questions as put to me as FNA chair regarding how the commission should take debate and consideration over multiple recommendations coming out of this working group, given they are all linked under the operational effectiveness working group's terms of reference. I think I would just remind the commission in response that these proposals, while grouped as being a product of the working group itself, these are a result of the independent review of this commission, which had a myriad of recommendations in a wide range of issues that the commission faces. And so they are not necessarily all linked in themselves. The working group itself was tasked with looking at the peer review and trying to put forward some proposals that would address the issues that were raised. And those are on quite a range of governance topics, so they're not all interlinked. I think that the commission, it's up to the commission if it wants to make decisions on one or all. But that's probably some helpful background that I should have done in my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Argentina, so please take the floor, Argentina.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Siendo esta la primera vez que tomamos la palabra en plenario, queremos agradecer especialmente al gobierno de Eslovenia por albergar esta reunión, por su hospitalidad, y asimismo hacemos propicia esta oportunidad para agradecer a la presidencia, a usted y a la secretaría por el arduo trabajo y los esfuerzos realizados por continuar con las labores de esta comisión en el marco de los desafíos que impone la pandemia, impuesta la pandemia. Con respecto a la posibilidad, y ahora entrando en sustancia, señor presidente, con respecto a la posibilidad de crear un órgano sin aprobar conjuntamente sus términos de referencia, simplemente queremos destacar que en caso que se decida crear un órgano, necesariamente debería definirse claramente su mandato, su competencia. La alternativa sería postergar su creación hasta que los términos de referencia pueden ser definidos y negociados. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Argentina. Next on my list is Australia. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I join others in thanking you, your minister and your government for the delightful reception last night. It was excellent, so thank you so much. And I also join others in thanking those who have put so much work into these elements of the papers from the OEWG. Australia does support most elements of the various papers. I'll go in order from our perspective. It's our view that the most important one that we agree here at this meeting is the budget reform strategy. The strategy simply goes to an appropriate level of budget hygiene, if you like, to ensure that the organisation is using the best and most modern tools to derive its budget. And you've all seen the paper over 2 years and with a 4-year outlook. This is a really important paper for the Commission to deal with at this meeting, in our view. On the other elements of the OEWG papers, Australia supports the formation of the committee structure as proposed. We do hear the comments from Argentina around the issue of making sure we have agreed the terms of reference for that. And I think Argentina and the US propose perhaps 2 different ways to achieve this. Australia could support either of those. We do think there needs to be clarity as to what the Commission is agreeing to, but we are in principle fully supportive of the new structure for the work of the Commission, as it highlights the important focus this Commission also has on management issues. Chair, on the third item, there is a choice put to the Commission that this group should make reference to, and that choice was in terms of whether or not the Commission wishes to agree to develop work plans and to form a group to create a strategic plan, or to simply at this stage approve work plans. So some guidance from the membership would be needed for a decision on that. Australia's view is that clearly in the long term, a strategic plan is appropriate, but at this stage, given how busy our debates are, we think the first step of developing work plans is a very sensible way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Australia. I have Chile as a next. Chile, please take the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Siendo la primera vez que nos dirigimos en plenario, quisiéramos agradecer al gobierno de Eslovenia por ser anfitrión de la CBI y por toda la hospitalidad que ha tenido, incluyendo la recepción de anoche. Muchas gracias. También aprovechamos en este tema de agradecer al grupo de trabajo sobre efectividad operacional, ya que ha sido un enorme trabajo el que han desarrollado por muchos años durante pandemia de manera interseccional, lo cual es más difícil que de manera presencial. En este sentido, estuvimos participando de las discusiones en el comité de FNA y en el grupo de trabajo, y dado que hubo mucha discusión respecto de la estructura y de los términos de referencia en general, no solo para el comité de manejo, sino que de diversos puntos que todavía requerían de mayor discusión y trabajo quizás y revisión, ya que es un texto complejo, bastante extenso, sobre todo que enmiendan las reglas de procedimiento. Estamos también en línea con lo expresado por Argentina, que creemos que no puede ser adoptado una estructura sin tener los términos de referencia claros, y como también hicimos presente, todavía no está bien definido ni acordado por la Comisión ninguno de estos temas. Sin embargo, hay otros elementos en la propuesta respecto de la reunión, del buró, de los documentos. Como les indicaba, es una propuesta que tiene bastantes elementos que no incluyen ni la estructura ni los términos de referencia y que podrían ser abordados en esta sesión y los otros discutidos para durante la próxima reunión. Y intersesionalmente sería muy interesante que esto pudiera estar alineado con la propuesta de un grupo de trabajo para que vea la visión estratégica y los principios de la CBI hacia el futuro. Estas discusiones pudieran también ser contenidas en ese sentido. Finalmente, quisiéramos consultar al presidente del FNA cuál es su intención para proceder con esto, si sería una propuesta revisada de lo que han planteado o dependiendo de las discusiones que se realicen acá. Gracias.
Thank you, Chile. I will first let the other interventions go through and then pass the floor to the chair of FNA. Costa Rica is next on my floor, so Costa Rica, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. En primera instancia, agradezco al gobierno y al pueblo de Eslovenia por su amable hospitalidad en esta reunión. Y también agradezco al fuerte trabajo que han hecho los diferentes grupos en sesiones intersesionales y durante esta dura pandemia que nos golpeó. En Costa Rica, en relación a la estructura, considera que es necesario actualizar la estructura de la Comisión Ballenera Internacional y traerla al siglo XXI de una forma adecuada. Sin embargo, tenemos algunas observaciones respecto a los ámbitos de los comités de esta propuesta y consideramos como un ejemplo y que nos preocupa bastante es el establecimiento de un comité llamado de ordenación, que en principio y de acuerdo a nuestro espíritu, debería de estar bajo el mandato del Comité de Conservación. Sin embargo, somos flexibles y en caso que este comité se mantuviera, proponemos que este comité se debe llamar de casa aborigen, de subsistencia e infracciones y no de ordenamiento como está establecido en los documentos, ya que el solo nombre de ordenamiento nos podría estar devolviendo hasta hace 40 años, cuando esta organización aprobó la moratoria a la casa comercial. Igual que mencionó a Argentina, creemos que los términos de referencia deberían de negociarse en esta reunión y en el caso de este comité en particular, es muy importante incluir enfoques actuales como el enfoque por ecosistemas y el criterio precautorio. Así que muchas gracias, señor presidente, y estaremos participando en las deliberaciones con mucho entusiasmo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Costa Rica. Next on the floor is New Zealand. Please take the floor. Just wait, it will go red. New Zealand, please pass the mic to New Zealand technicians, please.
Thank you, Chair. And as this is the first time that New Zealand has addressed the plenary, tēnā koutou, greetings to all. Can I join others in thanking the Slovenian government for their wonderful hosting in this gorgeous place and for their hospitality last night, a lovely reception. In terms of this particular agenda item, we too would like to thank the Operational Effectiveness Working Group for their chairing of the group and all of the members. It has been a wide range of members who have been part of this group, and it's been a long and challenging process we do want to acknowledge the extensive outreach over the last several years so that all of our members here in the Commission have had an opportunity to submit their views. We acknowledge that there are more conversations to be had on aspects of the proposals. New Zealand would like to make 2 points. The first, we support the new committee structure proposals. We see these as a modern approach to the Commission, but we recognise there is more work to do on the terms of reference. To be pragmatic, New Zealand could support either approach suggested by Argentina or the US as to the process we move forward on terms of reference. Secondly, we would like to place on record that New Zealand strongly supports the budget reform proposals. These are accounting best practice, moving to zero-based budgets, treasury strategy, etc., that we use in our own government at home. And we would hope that the budget reform piece of this proposal could be advanced at this meeting this week. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. UK is next. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, like others, since this is the first time the United Kingdom has taken the floor, wish to express our sincere gratitude to the government of Slovenia for hosting this 68th meeting of the IWC and for the wonderful reception last night as well, and also to the Secretariat for their significant and fantastic support to the meeting. We'd also like to thank the co-chairs of the Working Group on Operational Effectiveness, and particularly note this work has been the culmination of 4 years of extensive consultation with contracting governments and observers to identify areas where we could strengthen the operation of the IWC. Turning to the proposals, we believe the budget reform strategy will provide a crucial route to allow the IWC to balance its budget in the longer term and therefore strongly support its endorsement. We also believe the government's reform proposals provide a good approach to improve the institutional and governance arrangements of the Commission and its subsidiary bodies. So we support the formation of the committee structure as proposed and could also support either the terms of reference options on the way forward proposed by the US or Argentina. Finally, the UK also supports the option to develop work plans, and while we support discussions on the strategic plan, we also align with the comments made by Australia on the already very busy schedule and whether now is the right time for these discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. I just asked the technicians to return to the slide that was on the screen before so that delegations can see the structure of our discussion. Yes, thank you. Next on my list is India. India, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to say that India supports the formation of the current structure proposed. However, we recognize the need for more discussions on the terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India. I don't have any contracting governments. Sorry, Antigua and Barbuda. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies again for taking the floor a second time. But Antigua and Barbuda is identifying some conflicts in terms of the logical process of going forward. I don't see how our commission could accept the structure, the committee's structure, before we know what the terms of reference of these committees are. I don't see how we can accept a budget reform strategy before we know exactly what are we going to agree upon in terms of the committee structures and the actual committees themselves. I am listening very carefully to some of the comments that are being made here, especially regarding the question of a 40-year moratorium, and quickly went to Google to get the actual definition of what a moratorium should be. And it seems to me that we're basing the restructuring and reform and the implementation of recommendations on the operational effectiveness within the framework of some level of permanence on some elements of our work that should be temporary in nature. I believe that we might need to revert to our age-long commitment that when we are going to be looking at fundamental issues of change in our organization, that we cannot agree on anything until all is agreed. That is why I was asking the chair, in the interest of compromise, the chair of the FNA committee, just explain to us what in these recommendations, the set of recommendations from the operational effectiveness committee that we can accept without fundamentally changing the overall mission of this organization, of this commission, because it seems to me that some members are thinking that some of our fundamental commitments within the framework of the mission are aged, obsolete, and this proposal coming from the Operational Effectiveness Committee, these recommendations, will set to forever change the scope of the organization, its work program, and its mission. And because of those fundamental concepts, fundamental expectations, I believe that this document needs to be given some more time for further discussion. I also am hearing that some members are alluding to the fact that we are in discussions for 4 years on this document. What in IWC terms and the way in which we make decisions, that's a short time, given that we're talking about a moratorium. The word moratorium means a temporary cease and desist from certain activities. That's 40 years. So let us be real. Let us try to do this thing very properly. We are hearing from some countries that we need to merge the management and conservation committee, and I agree with that. And further down the road, I will explain why I believe that that is a very significant approach to be made. So I would like to suggest that the cherry picking can be very dangerous, and we're seeing it's emerging now that this can be very dangerous. And again, ask the chair of the FNA committee, please let us know what elements of this report we can implement now without having any fundamental departure from our mission and the object and purpose of our convention, and also an effect on the contributions of member states, given the difficulties that developing countries are having right now in terms of meeting present contributions, never mind going home to our governments saying that we have agreed to increase the contribution of our countries.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. I have 3 more contracting governments on the list, and I will let them make their interventions and then pass to the chair of FNA to answer to the 2 questions from 2 countries that came. So next on my list is, sorry, now I have 4. Next on my list is Belgium. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. and Belgium being one of the European member states, we fully align with the intervention just made by the Czech Republic on behalf of the EU member states, party to the ICRW. We would just like to add our voice of support for adopting the budget strategy. Like Australia, we think that this strategy can be adopted, is ready to be adopted and can be adopted on its own. We also fully agree with what New Zealand said, that this kind of budgeting is also what we do at home. It's part of good governance, and it does not matter, or it's really about cleaning up and having a healthy budgetary situation for the organization, which is independent, in fact, of whatever structure we would decide on. It's good governance, and we would urge all contracting governments here to adopt this, so that we can at least on the budgetary, on financial status, start with a clean sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. Next is Netherlands, and after Mexico.
Thank you, Chair. And as others, we would very much like to thank the government of Slovenia for the lovely reception we had yesterday. We would also briefly agree with what was said by Australia, that the budget reform strategy is the most important thing to agree on here. We would express our sincerest gratitude to the chair of the budgetary subcommittee and all participants to the process that led to the proposal of the budget reform strategy, which has been submitted for the consideration in this meeting. We also applaud the inclusiveness and transparency that led to this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Netherlands, Mexico, and followed by Iceland.
Gracias, señor presidente. Antes de empezar, desde luego agradecerle al gobierno de Eslovenia volvernos a recibir en su hermoso país. Es un placer estar aquí. La recepción de anoche superó cualquier expectativa. Mire que las teníamos bastante elevadas. Le agradezco también al grupo de trabajo en operación de efectividad operacional su increíble esfuerzo y, como lo señaló Países Bajos, la transparencia con la que se llevó a cabo este proceso. Una disculpa, se me olvidó apretar el botón para solicitar la palabra, entonces me quedé con mi banderita levantada. Pero bueno, México ya lo señalaron varios países. Estamos completamente de acuerdo que, dada la situación actual de la comisión, es fundamental revisar bien nuestra reforma presupuestaria y trabajar en ello. No vemos ningún peligro ni ningún ahorro si apoyamos la estructura que tenemos actualmente. Estamos de acuerdo con lo señalado por Argentina, de caminar en términos de ir desarrollando los términos de referencia, pero estamos abiertos también a cualquier discusión sobre la propuesta de Estados Unidos. También consideramos que es importante trabajar en términos del desarrollo del plan de trabajo y un plan estratégico que nos vayan guiando en estos momentos en los que tenemos algunas complicaciones presupuestarias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mexico. Iceland, please, you have the floor, followed by Dominican Republic.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As this is our first intervention at this plenary, Iceland would like to thank the government of Slovenia for its hospitality of hosting this 68th meeting of the IWC. Iceland recognizes that the IWC is in a severe financial crisis, and unless addressed, the organization might become insolvent, as previously noted. Therefore, steps need to be taken to address this with the financial strategy and the work plans. It is therefore Iceland's view that, as a priority, the task at this annual meeting should be to address the financial issues. However,
before potentially expanding the work of the IWC, either through agreements with other organizations or by accepting any proposal to amend the schedule or the proposed resolutions, that the financial impact should be assessed. Therefore, it is Iceland's view that it is necessary to look at the work of the IWC in more holistic manner so that everything is on the table that can affect the work of the organization, its operations and potential reorganization and cost impacts. Unless all potential financial implications are disclosed, it is difficult for the member countries to make fully informed decisions on the matters at hand. The restructuring proposed of the committee structure would hopefully assist in streamlining the work of this organization and lead to cost savings. On that basis, Iceland can look favorably at the possibilities in this context. For the restructured committee structure to function in practice, it is essential to have all IWC members on board. We need to endure and have an effective dialogue that results in consensus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Iceland. And I will ask at the end US to answer also the point of Iceland on financial implications of how we address financial implications of schedule amendments and resolutions or proposed ones. When I pass you the floor at the end. I have Dominican Republic, so please take the floor.
Muy buenos días a todos. Gracias por darnos la primera palabra en estas reuniones. La República Dominicana agradece de corazón la hospitalidad de Eslovenia en recibirnos en este precioso lugar. Como un país insular del Gran Caribe, nosotros quisiéramos declarar nuestro acuerdo con lo que fue planteado por nuestros países de América Latina y del Caribe, Argentina, Costa Rica y Chile, en relación a los aspectos de reestructuración estratégica de la Comisión. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Dominican Republic. Now I have St. Lucia. There we just have a slight technical problem because the microphone on the list is assigned to a different country. And distinguished minister, I think it will be easier if you move. That will be easier than for the technicians to change the name. But please give the floor to St. Lucia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. Since this is the first time my delegation is taking the floor, I would like to congratulate you on the manner in which you're handling this meeting. You are very fair and you're giving everybody an opportunity to have their say. I also want to thank the government of Slovenia for last night's activity. It was exciting, particularly the music, and the food was good. But Chair, I want to also thank the working group on operational effectiveness for all the work they've done. They seem to have put a lot of effort into this. They have canvassed many, many comments from member countries, and there's a lot to chew on. But mainly, I want to associate my delegation with a statement made by my colleague commissioner from Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you.
Thank you, St. Lucia. I have no more contracting governments requesting the floor, so I would pass the floor to US Ryan as in his capacity as the chair of the FNA committee. to please respond on the three points that were asked.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I could take Iceland's question first, or comment and question. Regarding the financial implications of resolutions and schedule amendments. Yes, we did discuss this in the F&A committee. It was not in my report because I plan to explain this as those resolutions and schedule amendments are introduced as part of that. So that will come up under the next agenda item as it relates to this meeting. And I would also note regarding the questions and comments about just the broader costs and having the commission able to see the costs of what it agrees in its various work plans and recommendations, that is actually included in the budget reform strategy that we are discussing right now. So if you look at Annex C and Annex D in there, there's very detailed information in proposals for not only how schedule amendments and resolutions might be costed or when they are proposed, but also all of the subsidiary body work plans, research and project proposals, as well as even workshops. So that is a very detailed component within the budget reform strategy document itself and one of the key pillars of it. So would reference not just Iceland, but others to that document. Then getting back to the questions that we received, or I received in my role as chair regarding how we plan to handle this discussion and potential next steps based on it, as well as for those that were asking for certain proposals or aspects of the proposals to be agreed to, and how we might potentially make a decision on those without knowing or with knowing the cost implications of those to the commission, as well as any implications or how they affect or impact the function or the mandate of the commission. I believe those were the questions that were referred to me. Please correct me if I missed anything. What I have heard was there was no consensus on any of the proposals here based on the discussion. However, there was broad support for a number of them. But some of these questions did exist and further clarification was required. I think based on this discussion, I would propose that over the coming days, before we return to this agenda item on Thursday, that I would work with those delegations that have raised these questions and concerns, try and see when I give my report, when we come back to this agenda item, what the status of those discussions are, see if there's a way to display any clear proposals, whether it's for aspects of the OEWG proposals or whether it's in direct response to some of the comments here, for example, those questions on the terms of reference, and then present them back to the commission here for discussion when we revisit this agenda item on Thursday to see if there is any potential ways forward or agreement on one, if not all of those that have been raised. That would be at least how I would propose to handle it. And I would take into account in that report all of those questions and concerns that were just raised here by delegations.
Thank you very much for the feedback and for the proposal. I will come back to this. Now we are a few minutes over, but I would still try to finalize this part of the debate. We are under the agenda item 6.3 discussion, so deeply in it. So I just ask if there is any request for the floor from observers, non-member governments. I don't see any. Is there any request for the floor from observers, IGOs? I also don't see any. Is there any request for the floor from observers, NGOs? Yes, there is one. I don't see which one because Yeah, you will be given the mic, but you have to present yourself. I cannot present you, that's my point. So please take the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Mi nombre es Roxana Steinbach, pertenezco al Instituto de Conservación de Ballenas de Argentina. Antes de iniciar, deseo expresar nuestro mayor agradecimiento al gobierno de Eslovenia por su hospitalidad y realizo esta intervención en nombre de un grupo de organizaciones no gubernamentales aquí presentes, cuya nómina enviaré a la Secretaría junto al texto. En referencia a las propuestas del Grupo de Trabajo de Operatividad Efectiva para avanzar en una reforma de la gobernanza de la CDI a través de una nueva estructura de comités, deseamos expresar que la creación de un nuevo comité de manejo u ordenación sería una preocupante involución de todo el trabajo que lleva a cabo este foro internacional para adaptarse a las necesidades de conservación de los cetáceos e intereses de uso de una abrumadora mayoría de la población mundial en el siglo XXI. A 40 años de la adopción de la moratoria sobre la caza comercial, avanzar en una reforma de la estructura, incluyendo una práctica obsoleta e inexistente por décadas, sería un grave retroceso y sentaría un mal precedente para los legítimos avances de modernización de este foro. Si bien el comité propuesto fue originalmente planteado para lograr una mayor efectividad, integrando los subcomités de infracciones y caza aborigen, además de absorber el comité técnico, se ha transformado de acuerdo al documento 4.1.202 en un comité orientado al manejo de actividades letales de captura de ballenas. En los términos de referencias que se proponen, se menciona que el comité de manejo brindaría asesoramiento a la comisión sobre opciones técnicas y prácticas para la aplicación de medidas de ordenación y conservación para la caza de ballenas, con base en asesoramiento del comité científico y tomando en cuenta la experiencia de los balleneros / cazadores. Por lo tanto, el documento en cuestión no hace ninguna mención explícita y exclusiva a la caza de ballenas con fines de subsistencia. Esto nos resulta inaceptable, especialmente estando la moratoria global sobre la caza comercial en vigencia, y tras la adopción de esta misma comisión de la Declaración de Florianópolis en su última reunión presencial antes de la pandemia. Asimismo, cabe destacar que anteriormente el gobierno de Japón propuso la creación de un comité de manejo en el 2018, el cual fue rechazado por la mayoría de los miembros de la CDI. Si hay cambios propuestos por el grupo de trabajo que sí son aceptables, pero otros, como el comité de manejo, no pueden ser adoptados toda vez que van en contra de las políticas de conservación de la mayoría de los países aquí presentes, incluidos miembros del Grupo Buenos Aires que mantienen un compromiso permanente con la moratoria global sobre la caza de ballenas. Por estas razones, señor presidente, solicitamos a la Comisión reevaluar en el periodo entre sesiones esta propuesta de reforma para que la efectividad de la Comisión pueda alcanzarse adaptando la visión hacia el futuro y no hacia el pasado. Esta es la forma de avanzar, la única posible. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I would suggest to adjourn this session and break for a coffee break. And immediately after we start, we will also announce how we deal further with this matter, this part. So please take the coffee break. I would still kindly ask you to be back at 11:00. Thank you. Enjoy your coffee. We have to start, so please take your seats. There will be some technical announcements. So technicians, please pass the floor to the Executive Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. Here are some very important instructions for how to take the floor and how to yield the floor. The most important message here is you only press the button once. Press the button on your mic. It will be green while you wait in the queue. When it's your turn to speak, the AV team, audiovisual team, will turn on your mic. It'll be red. When you're done speaking, and this might be the most difficult thing you do all day, don't press the button. I know we all love to say, thank you, Chair, and hit that button. Don't press it. It'll be turned off automatically. Also, this is important. Do not change your nameplate location or where you're sitting. Otherwise, we'll call on a different country and you won't realize what's going on. And please don't bother raising your flag. Press your button. If you raise your flag, it's confusing. We understand it could be more challenging for the NGOs. We are trying to establish some property rights in the back and map them out so we know where you are, so the AV technicians know when to turn on your microphone. I hope that's helpful. Chair, I just have one more update. The reception this evening that the NGOs are offering will be at 7 p.m. Apparently they need to have a little more time to get ready for your visit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Regarding the mic, it's just you press it for the second time only if you pressed it by mistake. So in case you press the button by mistake, then when it's still green, when you press it for the second time, you will disappear from the list and your green light will go off. Now, let us continue our discussion. I continue to open the agenda item 6, Finance and Administration, the agenda item 6.3, which is discussion. And we were just finishing the third group of items here, which is proposals by the Working Group on Operational Effectiveness. And we heard how Chair of FNA proposes to handle this further. So I would invite all those governments that have had comments to address him, to approach him. Also governments that have concerns but and want to work on this and didn't raise it here are invited to approach the chair of the FNA, and we will continue the discussion on this on Thursday, when we will again have the agenda item 6.3 on our agenda. Now I turn to the fourth block of matters that we have to resolve, and that is voting rights intersessional work and also future of this working group. You have heard the presentation, and you have heard what were the concerns. So I open the floor for contracting governments. The floor is open. Actually, I see no request for the floor, but at least the future of this working group is something that we at the end will need to decide. So I'll first pass the floor to the chair of FNA USA, please.
Thank you, Chair. No, I wanted to intervene on behalf of the United States here. Just that we support the intersessional work that was laid out in the report of the FNA committee. I think there were some good discussions. I think it's actually going to be very useful to continue to try and address some of the fiscal challenges that were brought on by the pandemic. Help to find other ways to incentivize payment of dues and help delegations and countries that would like some assistance along that. And there's some good ideas. Also think there does need to be some discussions around defining criteria for that new rule of procedure regarding exceptional circumstances, and all of that is laid out in that proposed intersessional work. I would defer, however, to probably the future of the working group itself as something that we may need to revisit when we come back and see what comes out of the proposal discussions, as I imagine some of that may have recommendations that relate to the future of the working group. So probably need to come back to that. Thank you.
Thank you. And with this, I would then also close currently for the moment the discussion on this part, and then depending on the discussions on OAWG proposals, we will see on Thursday how to proceed or what to conclude on these two matters. I didn't have a request for the floor from contracting governments. I have a request for the floor from NGOs. I would just like to confirm if this is on these matters. So intersessional work on voting rights and future of this working group. Is it on this? If you can please just first answer if it's on this topic. If not, in between, I have a request from a contracting government, so I would pass the floor first to Antigua and Barbuda, and then clarify with the NGO. So Antigua and Barbuda, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Antigua and Barbuda is once again taking the chair to let fellow commissioners become aware of our intention to ensure that this commission continue to increase its democratic principles, while at the same time take into consideration the difficulties that developing countries are facing with regards to participating in this organization. We have seen even at this present meeting, Mr. Chair, that even though several developing countries have paid up their dues, they are unable to participate in this meeting because of a number of situations, including financial inabilities to pay for the expenses to attend these meetings. That brings us into a situation where we have to confront just how we can allow developing countries to participate more in the decision-making process of this organization without having to be denied of this participation because of their economic circumstances. And we therefore have to look at current and best international practices with regards to how an organization of this nature, without an infringement on its rules of procedure, can allow the majority of its developing countries members to participate in the decision-making process of this organization. We, for example, need to look at what sometimes we refer to as the pillar of democracy, the United States of America, and see how they handle the issue of ensuring comprehensive participation of their citizens and here of our members to take part in the democratic process. And in so doing, one of the mechanisms and element that is being used is the issue of absentee voting. I believe the time has come, given the technologies that are available to us, that we can seriously consider the issue of absentee voting for those countries that are financially qualified to vote, to be allowed to participate through absentee voting in the decision-making process. COVID has shown us that we are capable of developing very innovative ways to allow for face-to-face meetings and hybrid meetings where you deal with face-to-face participation and at the same time electronic participation. It has shown us the efficiency of so doing and how that method actually broaden the capacity and capabilities of small developing countries with financial challenges to participate. So one of the elements that I'd like for us to consider, Mr. Chair, is to see in what way we can develop an absentee balloting system that would allow for the broadest participation of members of this commission in the decision-making process, as long as they are financially in order, as far as the rules are concerned that governs your right to vote if you are financially in order with the Secretariat. So I would like for us to have some discussions on the possibility of an absentee balloting system, a hybrid type meeting system going forward, and the potential of us leading the way with regards to other international organizations to actually broaden the participation of our members and facilitate member countries with less financial competence to really take part in the decision-making process of this organization. So my recommendation, my proposed recommendation to us is to ask the working group, the OEWG working group, to take on as part of its intersessional mandate the task of looking at the possibilities of the introduction of absentee voting and hybrid type meetings for our organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. Next on my list is Benin. Benin, please take the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme c'est la première fois que le Bénin est en train de prendre la parole au cours de cette session, je voudrais également profiter de l'occasion pour remercier le gouvernement de la Slovénie pour avoir accepté abriter cette réunion et également féliciter le président et le secrétariat pour leur brillante organisation. Et je voudrais, mon intervention, c'est par rapport à ce que vient de dire mon cher collègue d'Antigua et Barbuda, que je voudrais remercier pour cette proposition que nous voudrions soutenir fermement parce que au vu des événements que nous venons de traverser et des difficultés que nous, pays en développement, nous rencontrons pour pouvoir participer à ces réunions, les contraintes que nous avons déjà citées depuis le début de ces réunions, et il est clair que la pandémie de COVID-19 que nous avons traversée nous a montré des voies et nous l'avons constaté dans d'autres institutions ou dans d'autres organisations de gouvernance et qui se sont adaptées, qui ont pu adopter des modes de travail qui permettent d'avancer. Et nous devons, au sein de notre organisation ici présente, accéder à ces champs d'évolution. Et c'est pourquoi je voudrais soutenir vivement la possibilité d'intégrer les votes par correspondance pour permettre à nos collègues délégués de nos pays qui n'ont pas pu faire le déplacement, parce qu'il vient de l'expliquer. Même si vous avez le vote, il y a les possibilités de prise en charge, tout ça là, qui sont parfois très difficiles et nous n'arrivons pas toujours à faire face à cela. Je sais ce qu'il a fallu pour certains de nos collègues pour être chaque fois en communication avec eux. Et déjà, nous pouvons déjà envisager les possibilités d'intégrer les vidéoconférences et autres dans nos réunions pour pouvoir faciliter les débats et les prises de décision. Donc, je soutiens, le Bénin voudrait soutenir la proposition de Antigua-Barbuda par rapport à la possibilité d'introduire les votes par correspondance. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Benny. I will ask now if there is observer, a non-member government that wishes to take the floor. I don't think so, or I don't see the request. IGOs, I also don't see the request. Then it's NGO. Technicians, please pass the floor to the first NGO and please present yourself. No, the mic was, please change the mics. And I kindly ask, I will remind NGOs.
I finally got it, Chair. Thank you. This comment is made on behalf of IWMC Water Conservation Trust and Global Guardian Trust, GGT. A playwriter would have found probably not a better scenario than the one involving the attempt to conciliate operational requirements of an international organization with the difficulties of its members to fulfill their obligations. Through the development of the League of Nations from 1919 to 1944, the concept of one nation, one vote became the safeguard of the sovereign rights of nations and the recognition that no nation shall be above another. The one nation, one vote principle was creating equality amongst nations. For too long, Chair, the Commission, like other international institutions, has allowed itself to create various levels of nations by depriving those experiencing financial difficulties or others of the expression of their sovereignty, of their equality, which is their right to vote. The Commission has come a long way in finding adequate solution to its financing. However, we believe that more needs to be done. Maybe the Commission should take the lead internationally in the recognition that the voting right of a nation cannot be altered, and that any solution to merging efficiency requirement of an organization with the financial capacity of its member be based on that recognition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Please pass the floor to second NGO and please present yourself.
KNABK from Greenland. First, we thank IWC for accommodating us to become NGO observers in the commission. As you all know, Greenland is a proud whaling nation and has a vast history of whaling through the centuries. And we commit to this work to ensure the subsistence whaling, and we hope that as we as NGOs are capable of protecting our right for subsistence whaling, and we hope to maintain our position, to have a voice and a place to address our concerns and views on subsistence whaling. And we thank the possibility to forward our commitment to the human rights, but also to the Aboriginal people's right to subsistence whaling, amongst many other rights that the IWC also has to consider in its work. And I think it's important to emphasize the need for the subsistence whaling as part of a historic and traditional point that the whalers have a user knowledge that you need to consider in the scientific work that is being conducted because of our history and the ancestral way of living that we need to incorporate in this scientific work that is being conducted. We need to leverage this traditional knowledge to accommodate into the IWC work. So we hope to maintain our position to have a strong voice. And we thank the Commission to allowing us to forward our views and comply with the regulations that the IWC has, not only for us as an NGO, but to promote the Aboriginal rights and subsistence whaling that we think is important to emphasize, that we have a strong position to ensure future regulation and quotas to maintain status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies. Apologies, that was 3 minutes for the interventions. And thank you, NGOs, for keeping within the time limit. I also trust that all the other interventions will be kept within the time limit that we agreed. My suggestion would be, as this part is connected to the future of the working group of operational effectiveness and potential change of terms of reference, that if US as a chair of FNA is ready, that would be dealt in the same manner as we agreed for the OAWG proposals. So Ryan will approach the delegations or vice versa. Delegations are invited to approach chair of FNA, and then I would suggest that you come with the next proposal at the same time when you come with proposal on working group of operational effectiveness. So the third part. Then let us now move to the fifth part, which is the report within the FNA report on the intersessional group on strengthening of the financing. And I open the floor for any interventions from contracting governments here. I don't see any request for the floor from those governments. NGO, excuse me, non-member observers? No. IGOs? Also don't see any request. Observer NGOs? I also don't see any request. So let's close this one and then let's move to our considerations on the proposed budget for 2023 and 2024. And I open the floor for feedback from contracting governments on the proposed options 1, 2, and 3 of our biennial budget. So the floor is open. I see no request for the floor, and India, yes, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. India stated its position on the output outcome budget framework yesterday and supported the paradigm shift to 4 years budget process, as well as the zero-based budget strategy for the Commission. Zero-based budgeting and outcome-oriented framework with qualitative and not only quantitative improvements would be perhaps the key to future fiscal sustainability of the Commission. While we reiterate our concern on the outstanding balances of about £500,000, the modalities being contemplated for the clearances of the outstanding balances may be shared with all the contracting, particularly the contributing governments. In these times of fiscal constraints, governments have embarked on strategies of prudent financial management to reduce fiscal deficits. We suggest that Commission would set an important example by adopting the option 1 in the presentation, which laid out the modalities for expenditure cuts. India supports the economies in expenditure to be the correct course of action at this time, in view of the fiscal space available with contracting governments in the backdrop of the pandemic. India also recommends that to improve the overall financial health, an outreach program may be designed and implemented to expand the participation. As the pandemic and its adverse financial impact has been a global phenomenon, India also recommends to consider inclusion of new members on the F&A committee of the Commission, cutting across continents so that regional inputs are reasonably appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. I draw the attention of the delegates here, this agenda item, that also the intervention of Norway was relevant, that was made earlier, was relevant to this agenda item. As I see no request for the floor from contracting governments, I would note that yes, I see. Benin, please take the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bien sûr, la Norvège avait fait une proposition et vous aviez demandé de la mettre au frigo. Et je voudrais juste soutenir cette proposition de la Norvège qui voudrait qui va contre la possibilité d'augmenter la contribution des États contractants, mais plutôt de réduire un peu les dépenses et de ne pas en créer d'autres. Et je voudrais, par ma voix, dire que le Bénin soutient la proposition de la Norvège dans ce sens-là. Merci.
Thank you, Benin. Morocco, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As this is the first time I take the floor, I would, on behalf of my delegation, congratulate the government of Slovenia for hosting this meeting for the third time, and also to thank the authorities of Slovenia for the lavish dinner yesterday. I congratulate the various committees and groups which have worked hard intersessionally to provide projections of reform to our commission. While I agree of these reforms are vital for the efficient operation and the management of the IWC to carry out its mandates, we do have objections to any increase in contribution in the actual circumstances in that period of post-COVID and difficult economic situation, particularly that there is no overview and there is no vision for the future for these coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. UK, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, the United Kingdom would like to thank the Budgetary Subcommittee and the FNA for the important work that's gone into providing such clear options within the budget proposal, and particularly thanks to Australia for their excellent leadership through these challenging issues. As we've heard and as raised previously, the Commission continues to face significant financial challenges, including a deficit in 2023, 24 and beyond. This is for several reasons, including the fact that contributions have been frozen for over a decade and not kept up with inflation. The UK remains extremely concerned by this. We therefore believe it's vital to bring expenditure in line with income to avoid any future deficit and ensure the Commission is effectively resourced to progress its important work. While it's extremely useful to have a range of options on the table, we do have significant concerns about the first option and the impact of the proposed budget cuts to the work of the Secretariat and the Scientific Committee. Although the second option proposes more moderate cuts to budgets with conservative increases in dues, we still don't think this goes far enough in solving the significant challenges facing the IWC. We therefore consider option 3 to be the best option, and we would fully support raising annual contributions to help avoid similar issues arising in the future. In addition, whilst we have concerns about option 2, we could support option 2 in order to agree a way forward. We fully recognise the significant financial and fiscal challenges facing many countries, including due to the pandemic, but we'd encourage us all to carefully consider the longer term implications of the decisions we're making at this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I have Antigua and Barbuda next on my floor, so please take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Antigua and Barbuda has carefully examined the 3 options that were presented before us. And we are having some great sympathies for the situation in the Commission, but we are also very much aware of the local situation on the ground. And while we're acting internationally, we have to really think very much locally as to what is going on. Mr. Chair, Antigua and Barbuda will be willing to join in some consensus on one of these, one of the 3 options. But if and only if we could dig a little further and bring our contributions allocation strategy in line with best international practice as it obtains in other United Nations bodies, where financial contributions are more in line with countries' financial realities. So I don't think that it would be prudent for us to develop a budget strategy for this organization in isolation of the best practice approach as is seen in other international organizations. So our recommendations would be that we kindly ask the committee that have so ably allow us to have three options before us to review its work and take into consideration the best practice approach as obtained in other UN bodies along the line of proportionality. Thank you.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. I have Brazil next, followed by Guinea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just want to associate ourselves with the UK. We also think that the option 3 would be the best option for the Commission. We are all aware of the problems that, with inflation that have caused the loss of financial capacity for the organization. We think this is an important organization that has a very important role to play and has important challenges ahead. We know about the cuts in the scientific committee of 30% 4 years ago. We are contemplating new cuts in this new budget, which is lamentable. And then we are in just the issue before, we were talking even about creating a new committee when we are cutting the budget of the existing committee, of an existing committee as the scientific committee, and the conservation committee is living on voluntary contributions. So I think we have to be very serious about the future of the organization, give to it the financial support that it needs, and also allow the scientific committee to do its important work. And also the same with the conservation committee that has new challenges to face. So we are in favor of option 3, and we would expect the European Commission to follow us, because we understand that we have a leadership role to play here. Countries that are concerned with the environment. And I really commend other countries to follow option 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Republic of Guinea. The floor is yours, followed by US.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier le gouvernement de la Slovénie pour l'accueil et l'organisation de cette session de la CBI. J'associe aussi le secrétariat exécutif de la CBI pour toutes les dispositions prises. Et je voudrais, par la même occasion, soutenir les propositions faites par mes prédécesseurs sur le budget. Et comme vous le savez, le comité scientifique, le comité de conservation sont des comités très importants pour la vie, la survie de la commission. Donc, des contributions volontaires venant vraiment des parties contratantes serait une bonne solution pour soutenir notre commission. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. USA, followed by Belgium.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports passing a balanced budget, and for reasons similar to those outlined by the United Kingdom and others, we can fully support option 2 is what we believe is a very reasonable way forward for this commission that will at least help us start to address some of the money financial challenges we have been discussing. Consistent also, I believe, with the intervention from Norway. The US does believe that the advice that the scientific committee gives to the commission and the work of its subgroups needs to be prioritized. So in this respect, I'll reiterate from a US perspective, the scientific committee's advice in particular as it relates to Aboriginal subsistence whaling is critical to this commission, especially in years when those hunts would be reviewed. So that makes this an incredibly important priority for the next biennium. We also outlined the number of the subgroups of the SC that would be related to that and why those should be prioritized in the Finance and Administration Committee. So I won't reiterate those here. But one thing I do want to reiterate is that while we can support the Scientific Committee moving to biennial meetings as proposed in both options 1 and 2, the Scientific Committee would need to meet in person in the same year as the Commission meeting, starting in 2024. This would align with the schedule of Scientific Committee advice on Aboriginal subsistence whaling hunts that we agreed to as a Commission back in 2018. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Belgium, followed by Germany.
Thank you, Chair. We are also very appreciative of the work done by the Budgetary Subcommittee, and we fully agree that it is important to have to not approve a deficit budget and to clean our house. As mentioned during FNA, Belgium has a national zero nominal growth policy. However, we are fully appreciative also of, or we fully appreciate the difficult situation, the financial situation the Commission is in today. And therefore, we believe, like many others before us, that option 2, which aligns both of a reasonable increase of contribution with some cuts in the budget, is a reasonable way forward, and therefore we would like to support option 2.
Thank you. Germany, followed by Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, fully understandable that this is a very crucial point for the organization, and I think for us a balanced budget is important. Very similar to what was said by Belgium. Our horizontal policy is this zero nominal growth policy, but here we have a very specific situation within this organization, and in the spirit of a compromise, I can say, and I'm glad to say that we could live with option 2. To make it clear, what we could not accept is option 3, but only increase payments without any further progress on the other side is not acceptable for us. So option 2 is the preferred option for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Switzerland, followed by New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Switzerland would like to thank the Slovenian government, the Slovenian people, to invite the IWC a third time. It's just a great location, and not to forget also all the invitations towards the scientific committee that also had the pleasure to be a couple of times already in this wonderful country. And before I just say a few words towards the options, not to forget, there was a great evening we had yesterday. So thanks again to the Slovenian government and Slovenian people. Switzerland shares the views expressed by the UK and Brazil with a clear preference for option 3. But of course, we see the difficult situation of many member states, and in our view, option 2 could be a reasonable compromise to find common ground. Thank you.
Thank you. New Zealand, followed by the Netherlands.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand also joins others to thank the FNA committee, and within this, the budgetary subcommittee, for their significant work on balancing the next 2-year budget. We know how challenging this has been and that there are no easy answers. I'm sure we all know too that this same conversation we are having here today is being had in every international organization across the globe. The pandemic has impacted significantly on how we as a global community support the work that goes on in the international realm. But our work must go on, and we must find an approach to ensure the priority work of the Commission continues. We agree with other speakers that we need scientific advice to underpin the programs of this Commission. New Zealand supports a middle ground at this time. For this reason, New Zealand supports option 2.
Thank you. The Netherlands, followed by Denmark.
Thank you, Chair. We would also like to thank Australia and also would like to echo the concerns raised with the financial situation of the IWC, which will make the Commission insolvent if nothing is done. Australia has led a thorough and diligent process over the last 4 years. This issue is very sensitive, and we would agree with previous speakers that we should strive for consensus on this as much as possible. We can understand that option 3 will be difficult for some countries. We have severe concerns with option 1, as this will have serious long-term implications on the functioning of the Commission and the Scientific Committee, which is the backbone of the IWC. For these reasons, we strongly support option 2 as the most balanced option to ensure the IWC is able to deliver its work. Thank you.
Thank you. Denmark.
Should I? Yeah.
Just press the button. Yeah, please give floor to Denmark.
Okay, Denmark is happy to support option 2. And I would like in that connection to stress that priority should be given to the important work of the Scientific Committee related to Aboriginal subsistence whaling quotas. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominican Republic.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Encontramos que la opción más equilibrada para estar en equilibrio con los países es la opción 2. Apoyamos la opción 2. Creemos que es la más adecuada. Gracias al comité por su gran trabajo. Gracias.
Thank you. France.
Merci beaucoup. Je souhaiterais remercier au nom de la France les autorités slovènes pour l'accueil de la 68e commission baleinière internationale dans cette si belle ville de Portorož. Comme la Belgique et l'Allemagne, la France est habituellement en faveur d'une croissance nominale zéro des contributions nationales au sein des organisations internationales. Cependant, du fait de la situation budgétaire de la commission baleinière ainsi que des priorités qui doivent être accordées, notamment au travail du comité scientifique, la France peut soutenir l'option 2. Cette option semble être pour nous une proposition raisonnable et de compromis qui nous permettra d'avancer. Merci.
Thank you. My list of contracting governments is now finished, so I ask if observers, non-member contracting government, non-member governments, apologies. No. IGOs? No. NGOs? No. Budgets that were previously adopted were in this organization were adopted by consensus. We were also in different situation previously than we are currently. We should strive for consensus on this decision also here. We hear broad support for option 2, but I hear also countries that are in financial difficulties due to these challenging times. And I note that, as mentioned by New Zealand, in any other intergovernmental organization, we go through this process by the way that there is negotiations on this. There is some time for contracting governments to check the flexibility with their capitals. and there are also possibilities to negotiate on the elements of the budget. Therefore, my proposal would be that there is further work done in a smaller group, and I would kindly ask Australia as a chair of the budget subcommittee to lead that smaller group with all the countries that are interested. My assumption is that you will need to project things and show numbers, etc. So I would suggest that this work is being done with the help of the Secretariat, and that the meeting room Adria, which we have, is used for these purposes. Now, on the timing of the first such meeting, I would like to consult a bit later with the Secretariat and Australia, and I will come up with this before we end this morning's session. With this, we have currently finished our deliberations on the agenda item discussion under finance and administration. We will discuss it further at a later moment, so it is planned to discuss it on Thursday, so that there is enough time in between for those consultations and meetings. So with this, I would adjourn this agenda item. And I would start, because we still have half an hour, I would start with the agenda item 7, which is proposals to amend the schedule. I just want to check with Secretariat in the IT team if everything is okay. If you can, then do you need a short break for preparing or not? I understand it's okay. So we will turn to the proposed schedule amendment to create a South Atlantic whale sanctuary. And this proposal was made available 60 days before the plenary, in line with our rules of procedure, in all 3 languages. The document, the name of the document is on the screen, so IWC68/7.1/01. It is also downloadable from the website. And therefore, first I would ask the proponents to present this proposal. So I pass the floor to Brazil. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal for the creation of the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary, SOS, has been first presented before the IWC in 2001. It is a well-known and well-established proposal endorsed by both the scientific and the conservation committees, and whose management plan has been approved by the scientific committee back in 2016. The SOS proposal is co-sponsored by Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay, and has been endorsed by the Buenos Aires group last September. The sanctuary has consistently been receiving majority support from IWC member states, for which the co-sponsors are grateful. This shows ample support for the idea that the South Atlantic ought to remain free of whaling activities, which I have to add that it is already free of whaling hunt, because the moratorium is in place. Of course, it includes the South Atlantic, of course. The SOS proposal transcends whaling and aims at strengthening South Atlantic cooperation, including scientific research and whale watching activities, both of which present significant potential for job creation and economic development. According to available estimates, there would be virtually no immediate cost for the implementation of the sanctuary, regarding only the process of introducing an amendment to the IWC schedule. Activities such as workshops or scientific research would be conducted in the future according to financial availability. Finally, I would like to put on record an important clarification. This proposal applies to whaling and whaling alone. It is not intended to affect and will have no impacts on overfishing activities, whose management will continue to follow the appropriate bodies and national regulations as applicable. And I would also add that it's our responsibility with the environment that it is a threat to the future of human race. We have seen natural disasters occurring more and more frequently. Climate change is a challenge for all of us. The concern with the environment is very big, and we have to face the challenges ahead of us. So the creation of the sanctuary will be another important initiative to guarantee the future of marine life in that part of the oceans. And I would like to have the support of all the members of this organization in order to make this important step ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. I pass the floor to another proponent, which is Argentina. Please take the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Tal como fue expresado y siguiendo lo señalado por la delegación de Brasil, la creación de Santuario de Ballenas del Atlántico Sur es una propuesta que cuenta con el aval tanto del Comité Científico y del Comité de Conservación de esta comisión. Y tiene por objetivo proteger y restaurar las poblaciones de cetáceos cuya área de distribución se encuentra en nuestra región. La iniciativa procura reafirmar los intereses de conservación a la luz de la creciente contribución regional a la investigación científica. Muchos países ribereños del Atlántico Sur han manifestado su apoyo a este santuario. En particular, los países en desarrollo, con el objeto de fortalecer los usos sostenibles, no letales y no extractivos de ballenas. Tal como lo advirtieron nuestros colegas de Brasil, esta iniciativa carece de relación con la administración y manejo de pesquerías. Para que conste en el informe de esta reunión, esta iniciativa se trata de conservación de cetáceos exclusivamente. No afecta ni impacta actividades pesqueras. Las actividades pesqueras seguirán reguladas por las normas nacionales e internacionales aplicables que, repito, no se verán afectadas por la creación del santuario. Por otra parte, y también para que quede registrado en el informe de esta reunión, la creación del SOS carece de impacto presupuestario. Estimamos que este aspecto es importante, dado el delicado estado financiero de la Comisión y la preocupación que compartimos y que ha sido expresada por varias delegaciones en esta sala. Quedamos a disposición, junto con los demás copatrocinadores, para dar mayores precisiones a este respecto. Aprovechamos, por último, para agradecer el apoyo brindado por numerosos países a esta propuesta, a través de tantos años en que hemos insistido con ella. Confiamos en contar
esta vez con nuevos apoyos, en particular por parte de países en desarrollo que no han podido hacerlo en el pasado y que, sin embargo, esos mismos países en otros foros internacionales se han caracterizado por mantener posiciones proactivas y responsables en temas ambientales. A ellos les pedimos encarecidamente que reconsideren su posición y faciliten la aprobación del santuario. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Argentina, and I pass the floor to Uruguay, the third proponent of this proposal.
Señor presidente, demás funcionarios de la CBI, delegados, observadores, demás participantes, reiteramos nuestra gratitud al gobierno de Eslovenia por la excelente recepción y felicitar por la impecable organización de la Secretaría en esta plenaria. En representación del gobierno de Uruguay, aprovecho esta oportunidad para reafirmar el compromiso como país para la conservación, protección y gestión integral de los cetáceos y océanos. Y destacamos así el apoyo a Argentina, Brasil, nuestro absoluto apoyo a la propuesta de enmienda de creación del Santuario de Ballenas del Atlántico Sur y a su plan de manejo avalados por el Comité Científico y el Comité de Conservación de la CBI. Destacar el compromiso obtenido en la reunión anterior de la CBI plasmado bajo la declaración de Florianópolis, un antecedente histórico, un hito que define el futuro de la CBI. Destacar el rol fundamental que brindan los cetáceos vivos desde el punto de vista económico, ambiental y sociocultural, su rol para diversos servicios ecosistémicos, su contribución para enfrentar la crisis global de pérdida de los ecosistemas marinos, su rol especial en la mitigación de los efectos del cambio climático como fertilizadores, manteniendo la integridad de las pesquerías. Esto debería ser un gran interés para muchos países aquí presentes que dependen de la pesca en gran parte del mundo. Las ballenas mantienen sanos los océanos y sobre todo los stocks pesqueros. Eso ha sido cuantificado y cuánto es que producen las ballenas en biomasa pesquera. En 2013, por ley, se promulgó en Uruguay un santuario de ballenas y delfines en toda su zona económica exclusiva, una ley que tuvo una especial particularidad, que fue presentada por niños y niñas de las comunidades costeras. Por otro lado, y no menor, hay que destacar lo que recientemente altos jefes de Estado y Gobierno, representantes de alto nivel, estuvimos reunidos en Lisboa, en la Conferencia de Océanos, destacando la importancia que tienen los océanos, bajo el lema de nuestros océanos, nuestro futuro, nuestra responsabilidad. Y en ello los cetáceos tienen un rol fundamental. Esto es lo que finalmente promueve el Santuario del Atlántico Sur, un espacio de colaboración científica, un espacio en el que, donde antes se produjeron prácticas de caza ballenera más severas. Es así que pedimos el apoyo de todos los países, actores participantes para esta loable iniciativa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Uruguay. Now, before moving to a discussion on this proposal, I would like to ask the chair of the FNA committee to inform us on possible financial implications of this schedule amendment. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first of the proposed resolutions and schedule amendments, I'll just make some general remarks that are relevant to all of how the FNA committee looked at this. We did have an agenda item on the financial implications of proposed resolutions and schedule amendments. The Secretariat presented some early draft costings reflecting estimated short-term 2-year costs of these resolutions and schedule amendments, particularly looking at direct Secretariat costs, costs to the scientific committee, and costs to run workshops and other costs. It was noted that this was the first time this type of costings were being prepared for these. Recognize that further discussions were needed with proponents, and there were a number of revisions that were discussed and made. As it relates to the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary, the Secretariat noted and the proponents confirmed that the initial direct cost to the Secretariat will be low. and no additional costs will be required to implement this over the next biennium. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I open the floor to interventions by contracting governments. The floor is open. And I see Antigua and Barbuda followed by Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to congratulate the proponents of this schedule amendment for their resilience, for their determination to ensure that their desire for a sanctuary is realized. And I would also, however, like to point out some issues that Antigua and Barbuda is facing after listening to the presentation of the proponents of this proposal. Mr. Chair, I note that the first speaker mentioned that this proposal transcends whaling, but at the same time in his conclusion, he said that this proposal is specifically about whaling. I do not understand that the conflict, and perhaps you need to explain that. If it's this proposal is addressing the issue of whaling itself and actually promoting whale watching as the proponents of this proposal have indicated, I think that we are running into some significant issues with regards to fair trade and the rules of WTO, because we have been asked here to adopt a proposal that will restrict one activity over a resource and encourage another activity for that same resource within the framework of a sanctuary. How can we justify this with regards to international trade and the rights of a country to identify and use a resource within the framework of its own desire and its interests, as against the framework and desire of another country's interests? So I'd like to ask the proponents to please explain how is it we will be able to withstand a challenge of this sanctuary going forward in light of WTO rules. Also, the proponents have clearly identified that this has nothing to do with fisheries, and FAO and its fisheries management organization will still have sole responsibility for fisheries management in these areas. We all know, Mr. Chair, that fisheries management organizations world over are pursuing fisheries management initiatives within the framework of a comprehensive ecological approach strategy. So how can you take one species out of the ecological framework and still think that it will not impact the management of the other fisheries or marine resources in that area? So I would also like to have an explanation from the proponents on that matter. Mr. Chair, I listened very carefully to the short submission of the chair of the Finance and Administration Committee. While there seems to be some agreement on the side of the proponents that there will not be no cost implication to this organization in the short term, I note very carefully that even the chair of the Finance Committee agree, and the proponents agree, that in the medium term, there will be some cost to the management of the sanctuary as far as our budget is concerned, at a time when we are hoping that we will have zero budget increase. Mr. Chair, I am very confused, and I'm sure many other members are also very confused that from a scientific standpoint, the management of living marine resources must take into consideration the impact that management activities or management measures will have on the users of this resource. In the case of our cetaceans, the impact are many, given the multiple use nature of these resources. And I do not know how we can justify this management intervention by way of a sanctuary, which will completely remove opportunities from certain users of this resource and place increasing opportunities, economic opportunities, in the hands of other users of these resources. That is very irresponsible for an international organization that has to strive for consensus and have to strive for balance. In that regards, Mr. Chair, I would urge the proponents and potential supporters of this schedule amendment to seriously consider the implications that a decision on this matter can have on not only our work in this organization, but the whole issue of how our work can impact other organizations and other users of this very important living marine resource. Mr. Chair, the principles of resource management goes against the grain of the intent of the sanctuary. I'm willing to work with the proponents on this matter to very carefully examine and address the concerns that are raised here, so that perhaps we can reach at some consensus at either the next IWC meeting or future IWC meeting. We cannot support this proposal in its current form. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I pass the floor to Norway, followed by Czech Republic.
Thank you, Chair. IWC sanctuaries provide protection for whale stocks listed on the schedule against commercial whaling. They do not protect against other threats such as ship collisions, pollution, climate change, entanglements, and scientific whaling. There is currently no commercial whaling or plans for such whaling in the South Atlantic, and IWC has already a global moratorium of commercial whaling. The proposal of a South Atlantic sanctuary is therefore redundant and can only serve to further polarize the Commission. Of more importance in this geographic area is the protection of cetaceans not on the schedule, for example, such as the Franciscana or La Plata dolphin, which is subject to what most likely is an unsustainable level of bycatch in coastal fisheries in the range states. To sum up, Mr. Chair, if this proposal is put up for vote, Norway will vote against the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Czech Republic, followed by India.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Czech Republic, speaking on behalf of the EU member states, party to the ICRW, wishes to reiterate the strong commitment of the EU member states to the protection of whales and thus welcomes any initiative that could contribute to a significant improvement of their conservation status. We consider sanctuaries to be a valuable component in a range of measures for the conservation of whales, affording them greater protection in specific areas important for their life cycles. We commend the work done by Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay on the proposal for establishing a South Atlantic whale sanctuary. These countries have succeeded in developing a comprehensive proposal which, for the first time, provides for a management plan involving the management of all threats to whales in the region. We believe that stimulating joint research efforts involving developing countries and foreseeing capacity building and public education activities, the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary will also develop the sustainable, non-extractive, and non-total economic use of whales at the benefit of coastal communities in the region, particularly whale watching. In doing so, the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary will also contribute positively to a number of existing international commitments on sustainable development, biodiversity, and climate change, and will facilitate conservation of sound whale populations subject to IWC conservation management plans. The EU and its member states urge all contracting governments to adopt this well thought out and scientifically convincing proposal at this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. India followed by Costa Rica.
Thank you, Chair, for giving us the floor again. India recognizes the importance of according highest degree of protections to the whales and other cetacean species. India has also declared its first community-based marine mammal conservation reserve. Notifying such conservation reserve is important because they uphold local communities as important stakeholders. And this step will go a long way in creating a safe haven for marine mammals in coastal waters. The first international goals for establishing marine protected areas to conserve the ocean biodiversity was set in 2002. With 193 parties committed to protecting more than 10% of the marine environmental globally by 2020 as a part of IC 11. Almost all, that is 99.8% of the very poorly representative species are found within the exclusive economic zones, suggesting an important role for particular nations to better protect biodiversity. The establishment of sanctuary or protected area network is meant for scientific management and conservation of the keystone species, including establishment of meta populations. And this conservation results in climatic mitigations and adaptations. Achieving this goal is imperative for nature and humanity, as people depend on the biodiversity for important and valuable services. Keeping with the conservation ethos of our nation, we support the creation of the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary proposed by Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. Thank you.
Thank you. Costa Rica, followed by several other countries, but I would attempt, because we are practically at the lunch break, I would attempt to give the floor currently to Costa Rica and then take all the others, including those that might still come, and we might still need a reply from, or there might still be time for reply from proponents to those questions that have been raised. So I would tend to give the floor now to Costa Rica and then adjourn the session. The list will remain open, so we'll ensure that those countries who are now on the list will be then taken after the lunch break in the same order of appearance. So Costa Rica, please take the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. En primera instancia, deseamos felicitar a los gobiernos de Brasil, Argentina y Uruguay, que realmente han sido persistentes en su objetivo de lograr la creación de este santuario desde hace mucho tiempo. Mi comentario, por supuesto que Costa Rica apoya la creación de ese santuario. El mundo está volviendo sus ojos a la conservación del mar, inclusive más allá de las zonas económicas exclusivas. Es un momento crítico el actual, donde altos jerarcas, tomadores de decisiones, políticos, donantes y toda la sociedad civil se está comprometiendo con acciones concretas, necesarias y urgentes para proteger el océano. ¿Y cómo no va a estar la Comisión Ballenera Internacional interviniendo en esta dinámica actual? Sería estratégico para este foro dar un mensaje claro de que se encuentra vigente, actualizada y robusta, creando un nuevo santuario mundial para la protección de ballenas. Y así muchos gobiernos y donantes podrían poner de nuevo sus ojos en la labor de esta Comisión Ballenera Internacional. En un momento en que tanto lo necesitan las ballenas como también las miles de personas que han hecho del uso no letal de ballenas la fuente de su bienestar. Reitero el apoyo de Costa Rica a esta propuesta y agradezco su atención, señor presidente.
Thank you. As announced, I will adjourn now this session. I wish you a good lunch. I wonder if you have any practical announcements.
Thank you. We should be ready with an update on credentials after lunch. Thank you for your patience. And we thank our